Okay, we're going to start off with a question. So, hands on buzzers. Let's get this one answered. Do you know how much your current research data management provision is actually costing you? So let's see what you think. Someone does. I'm surprised. Keep going. Give it a few seconds. Come on. 19. We want a bit more than that. I want to see at least 30 responses up there. Isn't it? Whoops. Why is that? Oh, silly me, silly me. Apologies. I pressed the wrong button here. That's the one. There. Okay. Well spotted, Ed. Thank you. Ah, that's what I expected to see. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we've got some people who think they know what it costs them. Interesting. Okay. All right, leave that running for a few minutes. You keep on adding to that as we go along. Because I don't think most people in this room, even those who said yes, actually do know what it's costing them. So, as I'm the first of the Jisc people up here, I get to do the quick gallop through who Jisc are, what we do, and so on. I'm trying to juggle three things at once because I've got all my speaker's notes and so on here. So otherwise, if I don't do it properly, I'm going to get really confused. So, who is Jisc? Well, we were something else. We're now a charity. In the higher education, further education, and skills sector. Some people here will know this very well. Other people may not know this at all. But the things that are key as far as we're concerned, and as far as this presentation is concerned, are these bits down here at the bottom, what we do. And the shared service side of things is all about trusted advice, sector-wide deals, and shared digital infrastructure. And we have a mission and a vision, and I always forget this, but I have to read it. So, to make the UK the most digitally advanced education and research nation in the world. I don't think we're there yet, but I think we're pretty close. So, we also had an old motto. It used to be, we take risks so you don't have to. I'm from Futures, and what we do is all the stuff that hasn't been done before in theory. And we have this pipeline, also known as the Hungry Caterpillar, and we are somewhere around about here as far as the Jisc data service is concerned. Can you see a spot there? You can see a spot there. We're alpha, beta. We're about at the point where we're thinking about transitioning to service. We have pilots who are getting involved at the moment. And a little bit of thought about the research, sector-wide approach to research data management. I just click that there so I can see what I'm doing here. It's very, very complex, this stuff. That's better. The drivers, well, particularly, it's about discoverability, it's about reuse, and it's about preservation. Those are some of the key factors that are driving this particular aspect of the shared service. When data is made widely available, when people can find it, and when it's preserved, and that's not the same as backing up, we'll come back to that later, with standardized data and so on, then it's much more likely to be reused. And that's one of the key driving arguments behind this whole shared service concept. We're trying to make sure that there is better research done because we're sharing the data, because we're making it easy and able for other people to share the data for the long-lasting benefit. And in theory, that should lead to cost savings down the line. You don't have to redo the research and so on. So some of the other things that are driving this particular aspect of the service, we did some surveying of the members of Jisc and higher education sector, and we asked them about what were their key issues. Whoops, wrong button there. Already mentioned sensitive data. People are very worried about that. Metadata, advocacy. We talked about that quite a lot as well. So this is a quick run through the drivers and so on. And again, these slides will be available later on. So if you want to read those in detail, by all means do so. And we came to the conclusion that we had to step in and do something about this. This aspect here was one of the key drivers. The EPSRC and RC UK expectations that data should be available after research has been published. Data available for up to 10 years after the last access, 10 years from last access, which in theory could mean forever. come back to that one later. Again, a quick gallop through, and some of my colleagues will be mentioning things like this as well later on. So this is what we are doing now. People are saying this is the time to act. We have to act now. This is a bit more of the nitty-gritty, the meat about what the research data shared service is. There are core aspects of it. There's the collection and reuse, or the repository aspect of it. There's the, oops, sorry, I'm pressing the wrong buttons here. That's better. There's the preservation aspect of it, and that's a key aspect. Many of the institutions in the higher education sector didn't have preservation sorted. And the reporting aspect of it. But the bit that's possibly unique as a shared service is the underpinning glue that joins it together, and the fact we are talking to external systems as well. These parts all talk to each other, and they talk to external systems as far as the putting in metadata is concerned, and as far as pushing out metadata for discovery systems as well. I put that up there to show the model. I don't expect you to read that. I can't read that myself. But we have standards underpinning this. This is the research RDSS data model. It's available on GitHub if you want to download it and read in detail. I don't expect most people here particularly interested in this, but this just shows some of the aspects of things we've been thinking about. The pilot aspect of it, in the alpha phase, 2 alpha repositories, the open source Samvera and Figshare, and 2 preservation systems, Preservica and Archivum, and again, reporting the links more together, the messaging layer underneath, and so on. This is what we're doing at the moment, and what we've done. This is what we're currently working on at the moment, is the transition to beta and then transition to service. Again, it's all about the service and so on. Now, I'm galloping through this because my aspect is all to do with costs a bit later on. You've seen this slide before. Thank you, Justin. It was mentioned earlier on that we're looking at having a black box solution to this sort of thing. Now, essentially, that is one of the key aspects of this, to make it so that the researchers don't realize that what's going under the bonnet, because in most cases they don't care. Here's my data, do something with it. So the typical service workflow summary: researcher deposits data, it goes into the messaging layer, it is basically signed off by someone in management. It says, yes, this is correct, or sends it back. It goes automatically to preservation systems and automatically to the RDDS, Research Data Discovery Service. So there are too many acronyms around here. I'm glad I got my colleagues in the room. And so on. So it's all semi-automatic. I say semi-automatic because there's still a certain amount of user intervention at the administration level required. What we're doing next, integration with more services. There are other aspects that we're looking at. There's safe share, all about using data safely and encrypted in transition. We're talking about data storage in agnostic data storage. In other words, allowing you to use whatever is the most appropriate storage, whether it's local systems or cloud and so on. We're looking at integration into other third-party systems. We're making sure that our standards are all out there and available. We're looking at integration with the Jisc tier storage service, which should be coming online towards the end of the year. And also with an updated DMP online and certifications. And I'll come back to certifications in a bit, and I dare say David will mention something about certification as well. We're looking at 3 service offerings. There's the end-to-end preservation, repository, and reporting. Totally facilities managed service. We're looking at the repository service. You can have just the repository bit if you want it, plugging into your current systems. We're looking at the preservation service. They all have reporting, they all have standards, advisory, and network membership built in as well. With the shared service, we can save you money, we can reduce your risk, we can reduce the burden, and we can ensure reuse, which ultimately will lead to better research. I know some of my colleagues are very keen on making sure that message comes out. And why us? We've been around for a time. And I said before, we're in the position to take risks and also amalgamate these things together, whereas individuals may not be able to do that, or individual institutions may not be able to do that. So, some of the problems, and this is where we're getting to my nitty-gritty. I mentioned the funder mandates, 10 years from last access. Now, in theory, 10 years from last access could be forever. If someone actually accesses that data at 9 years and 11 months, the clock starts again. So, it's an open access, open-ended problem. The the amount of data that's slushing around in the system is increasing exponentially. It is huge amounts of data. Now, earlier on, Sally, it was said something that she didn't have much data being put into the system yet. Well, I suspect that that's a very short-term situation. The more people start to put data into these things, the more data will be put in. The more they discover it, the more they find out it is useful and easy to do so, they'll do it. But it's not just the question of general research data, because we're looking at this for the wider data community as well. These figures, they're talking about structured data and unstructured data, but that's immaterial, but there's basically an enormous amount of data. Other parts of the problem, most people who have come across the mandate that I mentioned earlier on haven't got an existing budget to pay for anything new. They don't understand what it's costing them at the moment. They have bits of infrastructure, bits of provision that's scattered all around their institution, and essentially they have no idea of what it actually is costing, and no mechanism in place in order to gather that information. If they do have systems, those systems don't talk to each other. There's the essential problem of rekeying, which is the bugbear of many a researcher. It's one of the reasons why researchers really hate putting in metadata, because they find they're doing the same thing again and again and again. Other aspects of it. Well, if you have a new mandate, no budget, lack of understanding, you have what I call a sustainability headache. It's not going to go away. And one hopes that the shared service will at least reduce the headache or provide an analgesic anyway. We also have another problem in terms of sustainability. I call it the funding cliff. In most cases, project funding allows you to spend money during the lifetime of the project. However, with preservation, a significant portion of the cost occurs after the end of the project. So one of the problems that many people are coming across is, how do I pay for that? Now, there are solutions which are pay once, keep forever. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, those solutions haven't been around long enough to be truly tested. And someone who tells you now that they can keep your data for 30 years, they can probably show you a lot of stats, but until the data's been kept for 30 years, you're still not 100% sure it's going to be there when you want it. And it's not just a question of keeping the data, obviously, it's also a question of preserving it, of curating it, making sure it's still usable. Other problems in the sustainability front, we have this problem of, what can I actually put in my budget? Most people don't know. On the one hand, they don't know that they can put information, put a budget line in their project submission that says, I want to spend this money on research data management, I want to spend this money on preservation. Even if they do know that they can do that, they don't know how much they should put in there. What's an acceptable figure? I'll come back to that in a minute. Can I recharge? Some of you may have come across this holy grail of this whole research data management thing is, if a project is using my services, can I recharge them for that? And then how do I recharge them for that? How can I prove that the money I'm charging them actually equates to what they're using, the resource they're using? How do I avoid the problem of double dipping? Anyone here know what double dipping is? This is interactive, please show hands. Double dipping? Yeah, I've got a couple of people who know double dipping. Essentially, thou shalt not pay for the same resource twice from two different pots. That's bad. So if someone's paying for your infrastructure and you're charging someone for the use of the infrastructure out of a different budget, not good. Especially if the auditor comes along and says, naughty. Other problems. We don't know what it's costing us at the moment, but we can sort of try and figure it out by asking the appropriate questions. But we haven't the foggiest what it's going to cost us in the future. I mean, there are numerous models around there. I was involved in the 4C project, the collaboration to clarify the cost of curation, and it took me 4 years to get that right. And one of the conclusions we came to was there are many, many models out there. None of them are perfect, and you're never going to get the right answer twice, if you see what I'm getting at. So it's an ongoing problem. How do we, how much does it cost now? How much does it cost in the future? Other problems, how do you evaluate the worth of your data? Because the bean counters, the accountants of this world will want to know that if you're spending money on something, it has some value. But how do you say, well, this bit of data here, you say it cost me so much to create it, and it'll cost me that much to create it again, but is that the value of the data? How do you measure the value of impact if your data is used by 300 different research groups throughout the world? How can you measure that? How can you measure those intangibles like risk, reputational risk? Someone's lost your data, or you lost your data. Someone's tried to sue you because they can't access the data, whatever. How do you measure those? So those are very difficult problems to overcome. And we've mentioned this before, the lack of understanding. It's a lack of understanding not only in what data management is, what the worth of data management is, why you should be doing it, and the worth of the data, but also a lack of understanding about what it is you're doing. So many people I've spoken to and say, I'm involved in digital preservation. Oh, I know about that. I've got a backup disk on my desktop. It's a USB thing. I just sat it there. I haven't looked at it for a while. Backup is not the same as preservation. And all too often, the people who are making decisions about these things don't know, which is why I think the advocacy, I was banging on about that this morning, is one of the most important things of this whole problem here. And then we have the sustainability chasm. In most cases, the costs of keeping this data over the long term is not paid for by the income that's coming in. You've got to have some will to preserve it, have some other reason, for the public good, that's a common one. For the good of research data for everyone, that's another one. But until such time as you accept that there is going to be a gap, and accept that that gap needs to be paid for, there needs to be a will to pay for that, there's always going to be a problem about the people who count the money, count the beans, versus the people who count the benefits. It's all about the money. I'm done with the kids. Yeah. Jesse J. My kids hate me when I do that. Anyway. Okay, so next question on the Slido. I want you to have a quick look. Who currently pays for your research data management? So quick go. Poke buttons. Poke, poke, poke. And while you're doing that, I'll try and catch up with this. Yay. My institution, Who's paying them to do it? Other, Got a few there. Okay, so a large number of you think well, half of you think it's your institution. Okay. I'll leave that running for a bit. Keep poking on that one, and I'll just try and get this back. This super duper technology. Yay! Okay. So, a payment pathway. In an ideal world, which doesn't exist, we know, but anyway, an ideal world, you have a project proposal with a realistic RDM budget. It's approved. You get your project. You spend the money. You find someone who does a pay once, keep forever. And you track those costs, and you claim it. Fantastic. What actually happens is you don't know about that budget, you have an unrealistic aspect of unrealistic thoughts, or you think that if I put money in for RDM, it's going to reduce my chances of getting the project approved. You spend money, you're over budget, so either you reduce your research data management, or you try and find someone else to pay for it, or in some cases, the researcher dips their own pocket and preserves themselves, and you end up being underclaimed, which is bad. So how can we help? Well, all these problems, we've thought about this a lot, obviously. We've commissioned research about that high-level business case, the advocacy I was talking about earlier on. I'll come back to that in a second. And we commissioned research about how you go about costing these things. Again, I'll talk about that in a minute. And funder mandates, how much they will accept, what they will pay for, and the financial X-ray for research. This is great fun. So looking at those, on the high-level business case, We had research consulting to this work for us. They came up with some lovely figures, and again, don't worry about these numbers. We can look at those later. Investment in research. I should go back to that one. That's a nice, pretty one. That one. There you are. Loads of money. 26 billion in the UK government. And we have. I should have made this faster, shouldn't I? It's going too slow. Yeah, that's the one I like. The value of open data. So that's a big number. That's $3 trillion estimated value of open data, and part of that is making it available, making sure people find it. Oh, this is one I love as well. How much data has been lost? How much data you can actually find again after 5 or 6 years or 10 years? You've got that decision-making process we talked about this morning. It's going to take you 1 year to make the decision or 5 years to make the decision. The chances are by the time you've made the decision, the data's gone anyway. And the value of research data. This is just the UK, £920 million per annum is estimated value. Now that was a few years ago. So it's a lot of money. So if all this money's floating around in the system, how come we can't pay for this stuff? Why is it such a big problem? So, I talked about costing briefly. Part of the research we did in terms of costing was how you might go about doing this costing stuff. I'm looking at the time here. I've got to get up through faster. Activity-based costing was the way we concluded was the best way of doing it in terms of accurate figures. Determine all the activities, cost of those activities, add it up and divide by the number to get what your unit cost is. Traditional costing is what most people can do at the moment because they have an accounting department who has a certain amount of expertise in these things, but they do it from the top. They count the people, count the salaries, and divide it up. ABC gives you a more accurate figure, but it's harder to do. And traditional is easier, but less accurate. And the activities, anyone know what this is? Should be few should know what this is. Yeah, boo, yeah, but yeah. It's a good starting point. We took this as a starting point and the OIS model, and we added to it. We've got a shitload of stuff added to this now. So it's not just that. I mean, one of the big problems is obviously was what happens before it gets ingested. You know, that's a big problem here. This again, you can't read that, but it'll be in the slides. Some of the activities we came across, we took all this as well, and we started doing other things with it as well. We have a product called Financial X-Ray, which allows people to bring an accountant from Jisc into their institution and find out what their IT costs. And the accountants go in and they count up everything, and they interview loads of people, and they give you an actual real figure. This is what it really costs you. Well, we're doing the same thing at the moment for research. We're doing an X-ray, financial X-ray for research. And we have taken this, and we've taken the OS model, we've taken all the costing models, and we produce something better. So if you want to find out what it costs, I know a man who can. See me after school, as they say. So really what you need to know about costing is it's a lot more complicated than you thought. And there are all sorts of problems, as I mentioned earlier on, not just the fact that it's not centrally funded, not centrally costed, but also you might find the researcher's got that server under their desk and someone else has got a USB stick over there and so on. It's very difficult to find out what it costs. Very difficult to find out where it's at. Very difficult to make it discoverable. So what does it cost? These are certain aspects of things that are particularly costly in terms of research data management. Staff, that's the biggie. People prices. Then there's the licensing of the software, storage costs. Storage costs is a difficult one to estimate, especially in preservation systems. How many copies do you keep? Where are you keeping them? Are you keeping them in long-term access that costs you very little money to get it out, or short-term spinning disks that cost you a fortune to get it out, and so on? Procurement's a cost, compute costs, setup costs, and so on. We counted up all these numbers because we had to do it for ourselves, for our business case, an internal business case. And we're also passing on that information to our pilots and others as well to help them make their case. So this comes to the whole aspect of where does the shared service come in again. If you have a fully managed service, we can save you money. If you have a shared service, there are economies of scale. 2 people doing the same thing, there are bound to be economies of scale. 4 people, 10 people, 10 institutions doing the same thing, the economies of scale, it helps. We're standards-based as well. So if you want to plug into us, we have APIs. If you want to have certification, we're working on certification. The 27001 is our current target. We're also looking at data civil approval. My dream is ISO 16360C, and John's going to curse me because he doesn't think that I should be talking about that, but anyway. But that'll happen one day in the future. And those of you who don't know about that one, look it up. It's grossly expensive to do. The shared service allows you to use cost-effective optimized storage as well. We can help you plug into your local provision. You can help you plug into cloud. We can help you to plug into Jisc tier storage as well. It's integrated, and that's one of the key selling points as far as I'm concerned, is everything talks to everything. So information flow is semi-automated. It travels around the system. Only one place you have to key that metadata in, and the rest of it is done. It pulls information out of HR systems, it pulls information out of finance systems, and it produces a nice, wonderful data packet and an archival information packet with technical. Anyway, I'll go into the detail here. Reporting, you can see what it's costing you. You can see what that project costs. You can see what that researcher has spent. The golden bullet, or the ideal scenario, is that you can go in there and say, this is what that project costs, this is what we can charge to the budget, this is what we should put in the next project budget. And I think possibly one of the most important aspects as well is this network of shared experience. We've done it. We can help people. There are loads of people out there who have helped us do it. We have this enormous network of people who have asked the questions, who had done the worrying, and as I said earlier on, we take the risks so you don't have to. We worry so you don't have to. I say, well, you don't have to. I mean, you have to worry a bit, but we stay awake at night, so you can get your beauty sleep. When we were doing our little bit of costing as well, we looked at the range of alternatives to try and sort of compare ourselves with. Do nothing is an option. There are people out there who will end up doing nothing. I don't think it's a good idea, because it's a cheap option initially, but ultimately it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. We looked at the cost of doing it yourself. We estimated the cost of doing it yourself versus the cost of using a fully managed service. A few of the headline figures we came up with as a result of doing that. Generally speaking, the cost of a shared service is about less than 1% of the total research income at an institution. It came out typically at about 0.3, 0.5%. Now, I think that's peanuts to pay to preserve all that sort of information. A shared service, compared to do-it-yourself, having all those people doing development work for you, buying all the bits and pieces, buying all the kit and stuff, typically came out between 50% and 80% cheaper over a 4-year term. So in theory, it's cheaper than doing it yourself. And that includes things like procurement, it includes things like storage, it includes things like staff time. When I mention staff time, people always worry about the whole concept, well, all right, I'm saving all these FTEs, well, what do I do with them? Well, there's plenty of work out there for people in institutions, particularly in the research area. It allows them to do the research, not to do the research data management, which we can do for you. And it provides you a practical and auditable cost recovery solution. So you can say, yes, this is what it costs, and the sound's gone off, I'll keep talking very loudly. Yes, this is what it costs, and we can prove it. So another question, returning to the original question, I asked you, who currently pays for your research data management? Well, who should pay for your research data management? So just a quick look on the old Slido, and I get that one going. Whoop, wrong one. That one's the one, isn't it? Go on, come here, and there we go. Right, that's the right question? Yeah, okay, so who should pay for your research data management, if I can get it to work? And who funds data capture? Now this one requires you to actually type in some stuff, so start typing, please. And that just about concludes what I'm going to say.